Let me just say something that might surprise you. A woman can love you and still take you for granted. Not because she's cold, but because she's comfortable. Not because she stopped caring, but because she started assuming you'd never leave. That's the dangerous illusion, when consistency becomes invisibility. And by the time she realizes what your presence truly meant, you're already silent. And silence isn't just the absence of noise, it's the presence of power. Most men don't notice the shift right away. They respond to her distance by leaning in harder, more messages, more energy, more emotional proof. But what if the real shift begins when you stop doing all of that? What if your silence says what words never could? Because when a man disappears, not out of spite but out of self-respect, he doesn't fade, he echoes. So today, I'll show you exactly what happens in her mind when you stop showing up. Not from a theory, from truth, from how we actually feel. If that resonates, like this video and subscribe to Stoic Station, your place for strength, clarity, and emotional mastery. Start this journey now. Drop a 1 if you've gone silent to protect your peace. Drop a 2 if you're still fighting the urge to reach out. I read every word you leave below, and stay with me, because the moment she feels your absence is the moment everything begins to unravel. Let's dive in. 1. Silence hits hard. It doesn't begin in the arguments. It doesn't begin in the cold stares or the distant replies. It begins the very moment you stop showing up. That's when everything shifts. Most men mistake her silence for indifference, so they try harder. They send more texts, pour out more effort, push to prove they still matter. But every extra attempt only widens the gap. Because what she's really grown used to, what she's quietly relied on, is your steady presence. She doesn't admit it, but your consistency gave her comfort, and in that comfort, she held power. When you were always there, she knew she could push, pull, retreat, and you would still remain. That certainty made her feel secure, even while she slowly started to take you for granted. But the moment your name no longer lights up her phone, the moment she scrolls and finds no trace of you, that certainty cracks. At first it feels like confusion. She wonders why you didn't reach out. Then it slips into unease. Hours later, she's checking again, refreshing her feed, scanning your stories, pretending not to care while she desperately looks for a sign. Anxiety begins to whisper the questions she doesn't want to face. Did I lose him? Did I push too far? Is he really gone? And that's when the silence starts to work on her in ways words never could. Silence is louder than any plea, stronger than any argument. It echoes in her mind because she cannot control it. You're no longer feeding her ego. You're no longer giving her the reassurance she thought would always be hers to claim. The beauty of this moment is that you don't have to do anything. By stepping back, by refusing to play the game of endless proving, you've given her the one thing she can't ignore: absence. Absence isn't emptiness. Absence is power. It's the weight she suddenly feels when the ground beneath her confidence gives way. That is when missing you truly begins. Not because you begged for her attention, not because you chased her validation, but because you stopped. And nothing unsettles a woman more than realizing the man she thought she could count on has finally chosen himself. And if you think silence is just space, wait until you see how quickly it turns into the mirror she can't look away from. That's when the story gets even more interesting. 2. The weight of the small things. She doesn't miss the big gestures. She doesn't stay up at night wishing for the fancy dinners, the expensive gifts, or the surprises that made for good pictures. What lingers, what cuts deep when you're gone, are the small things she once dismissed as ordinary. The things you did so naturally that she believed they would never run out. Men often think they need to impress with something grand, something bold, something that proves their value in an instant. But what truly stays behind are the quiet details, the little acts of care that most overlook. It's the good morning text she used to shrug off. It's the way you remembered her favorite snack without being asked. It's noticing the shift in her mood when she pretended she was fine. It's the way you carried her struggles silently, never asking for recognition. At the time, she might have rolled her eyes, told herself, "That's just who he is," and brushed it off as if it meant nothing. But now that you're gone, those moments echo louder than anything else. Because in those details, she didn't just feel loved, she felt seen. And here's the sting: when she meets new men, they don't notice. They don't carry the same emotional depth. They don't pick up on the details that made her feel chosen. The contrast is sharp, and it cuts deeper than silence ever could. What she once took for granted becomes the very thing she craves back the most. She realizes it wasn't about the flowers or the big plans. It was about the way you listened, the way you remembered, the way you gave without needing applause. You see, most women only realize too late that the rarest thing isn't a man who can provide gifts or thrills. The rarest thing is a man who can make her feel safe in his presence, valued in his attention, understood without her needing to explain. That's what sets you apart. And once you've walked away, she learns that truth the hard way. Because now, when she thinks of you, it's not the grand moments that replay. It's the small ones, the ones no one else has managed to give her. And that's the memory that stings the most. Because she knows those moments aren't coming back. And if you think those little things didn't matter, wait until the silence forces her to admit that they were the very foundation she can't find again. That's when regret starts to whisper louder than pride, and missing you becomes a shadow she can't escape. 3. Calm. Outside, chaos within. She'll make it look like she's fine. That's the first mask a woman puts on when she realizes she might have pushed a good man too far. Her social media will say it all: smiling selfies, living my best life captions, maybe even a night out with friends. On the surface, she wants the world, and especially you, to believe she's unbothered. But behind the curtain, it's a different story. Men often see this act and fall into despair. They look at her pictures, her updates, and convince themselves she has moved on without a scratch. But what you must understand is that her calm is rarely peace. It's performance. It's not healing, it's hiding. Because deep inside, she's already replaying every word you said, every moment you gave, every mistake she made when she thought you'd always be there. The conflict inside her is brutal. On one hand, she wants to believe she still has control, that if she wanted to, she could pull you back. On the other hand, your silence keeps proving otherwise. And that silence forces her to face the one thing she hates most: uncertainty. For the first time, she doesn't know where she stands with you. For the first time, she feels what you once felt when she withdrew, confused, unsettled, off balance. She might distract herself with casual dates, with conversations that never go deeper than the surface. But those distractions don't touch the place you reached. They can't. That's why, even when she posts as if she's thriving, she's checking her phone late at night, wondering if you've seen it, wondering if you'll react, wondering if you've already let her go. The calm she shows the world is just armor for the chaos within. And here's what stings the most. The longer you stay silent, the more the chaos grows. Because silence doesn't give her the comfort of answers, it leaves her with nothing but questions. Did she expect too much? Did she mistake your love for weakness? Did she lose a man who was actually rare? Each question cuts deeper than the last, and no amount of pretending can drown them out. That's when missing you turns into something more dangerous than longing. It turns into regret. Regret doesn't fade easily. It lingers, it haunts, It keeps her awake at night, and the more she tries to hide it, the heavier it grows inside her. And if you think her calm means she's moved on, you're mistaken. Calm is the mask, chaos is the truth, and silence is what exposes it. That's when the spiral begins, and it's only the beginning of her battle. 4. Ego versus emotion. Inside her, there's a war, and though she doesn't want to admit it, ego is slowly losing ground. A woman's pride is powerful. She hates admitting she was wrong. She hates facing the truth that she may have pushed away the very man who gave her more than anyone else. That pride whispers in her ear, "Don't reach out. Don't fold. He should fight harder. If he really cared, he'd come back." And for a while she clings to that voice. She convinces herself that silence from you is just another test, that eventually you'll break and prove yourself again. But emotions are relentless. They rise in waves she cannot contain. Memories of your steady presence, reminders of the way you noticed the little details no one else did, comparisons to men who don't measure up. All of it begins to flood back when she least expects it. She can bury her regret during the day, but at night, when everything quiets down, the truth knocks louder. She begins to feel the weight of what she once dismissed, your patience, your effort, your love that asked for nothing in return. That's when she starts testing the waters. It won't be direct, not yet. Instead, she'll watch your stories, hoping you notice. She'll like a picture from weeks ago, something subtle enough to deny, but obvious enough to spark your attention. Maybe she'll send a vague message, "Hope you're doing well." A text that doesn't say much but really means, "Do you still care? Is the door still open?" The truth is, she doesn't want to walk back completely, not yet. Her ego still tells her it would be weakness to admit fault. But her emotions are pushing harder each day. And here's where the fear begins. When she senses that your energy has shifted, that you've stopped chasing, that you're no longer standing where she left you, the panic sets in, because suddenly the script has flipped. For the first time, she's not sure if you'd take her back. And that realization terrifies her, because it wasn't supposed to be this way. In her mind, you were the one she could always count on, the steady force, the one who stayed no matter how unpredictable she was. But silence has exposed the truth. You didn't need to call out her ego. You let time and absence do it for you. And once emotion finally breaks through pride, missing you is no longer just missing. It mutates into regret. The kind of regret that lingers in the gut, that replays moments she wishes she could rewrite, that haunts her because she knows some doors, once closed, may never open again. And if you think ego always wins, wait until silence teaches her what words never could. That's when the strongest pride bends, and the story takes a turn she never expected. 5. Watching you glow. Her biggest shock doesn't come right after the breakup. It doesn't even come in the first waves of silence. The real shock hits when she sees you start to shine without her, because in her mind, she always believed you'd wait. She thought you'd linger in the pain, stuck in the shadows of what you lost together. That belief gave her a sense of control, a false security that no matter how far she pushed, you would still orbit around her. But then something changes. She checks your profile one day, maybe out of curiosity, maybe out of habit, and what she finds rattles her more than any silence ever could. You're not bitter. You're not broken. You're lighter. You're smiling in a way she hasn't seen in years. You're out with friends, taking trips, hitting the gym, building a life that looks stronger and freer than the one you lived when she still had access to you. She doesn't see sadness in your face. She sees peace, and that peace cuts deeper than anger ever could. Because now she realizes she's lost something far more valuable than she imagined. It's not just that you've moved forward. It's that you've evolved into a version of yourself she can't reach anymore. The man she once took for granted is no longer waiting in the same place. He's stepped into his own light, and the more she sees that, the more powerless she feels. That's the moment she starts to panic. Not because she wants you miserable, but because your happiness without her forces her to face the truth. She no longer has influence over you. You've broken free of the invisible leash she assumed would always hold. Now she's the one questioning her worth, wondering if she was ever as unforgettable to you as you were to her. And here's where the pain deepens. She doesn't just see a man living well. She sees a man she underestimated, thriving in ways she never inspired, but now envies. She starts comparing the version of you she had to the version of you that now exists, and the gap makes her sick, because she knows she can't go back and rewrite the way she treated you. That glow, that quiet strength, that unbothered energy, it's what unsettles her most. Because a man who can walk away, grow, and build without bitterness is a man she cannot replace. And if you think progress is just for you, think again. Progress is the loudest silence you can give. It's the mirror she can't escape, the proof she lost something rare. And that's when missing you turns into regret. The kind of regret that doesn't fade but follows her every time she sees your light shining without her. 6. The power of silence. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is not weakness. Silence is power, and nothing exposes that truth more than what happens when a man who once gave, once tried, once proved himself, suddenly chooses to go quiet. For most women, silence is the one thing they cannot control. Arguments they can handle, cold stares they can dismiss. Even your anger they can twist into reassurance, because at least anger still means you care. But silence leaves nothing to grab onto, and that nothing is what shakes her the most. At first, she tells herself, your quiet doesn't matter. She convinces herself it means you're sulking, that you'll eventually come back around, that it's just another phase. But as the days pass, she realizes something much heavier is happening. Your silence is not passive, it's active, it's deliberate, it carries weight, because it forces her to face her own reflection. Without your presence, without your voice steadying her world, she has to listen to the thoughts she's been running from. Did I push him too far? Did I mistake patience for weakness? Did I throw away something I'll never find again? That's what silence does. It becomes a mirror. And mirrors can be cruel because they don't flatter, they reveal. The longer you stay silent, the louder that mirror speaks. And suddenly your absence doesn't feel like space to her. It feels like rejection. Even if she was the one who left, even if she swore she needed distance, your quiet begins to feel like punishment, not because you're trying to hurt her, but because it shows her you're no longer attached. And here lies the paradox. The very man she once believed would never walk away has chosen peace over proving himself. That choice alone is what creates the shift. Silence no longer feels like waiting. It feels like moving on. And that unsettles her more than any words ever could. Every day you remain quiet, her questions multiply. She asks around, checks for your name, scans your posts, searching for proof that she still matters. And when she finds nothing, when she realizes you're no longer signaling toward her, the fear grows. Because deep down, every woman who once took a man for granted carries the same dread, that he will finally realize his worth without her validation. Silence is not just the absence of noise, it's the presence of strength. It's proof that your life no longer bends around her moods. And that is the kind of power she cannot ignore. And if you think silence is uncomfortable now, wait until it becomes the very thing that forces her to regret everything she once overlooked. That's when silence stops being empty and becomes unforgettable. 7. Value redefined. A man who refuses to be taken for granted is unforgettable. That's the truth most men don't realize until they've given away too much of themselves. Too many men believe that endless patience, constant availability, and tireless devotion will eventually earn respect. They think that if they wait long enough, give long enough, sacrifice long enough, she'll wake up and finally see their worth. But that moment rarely comes, because respect doesn't grow out of desperation. It grows out of self-possession. Women only respect what they can't control. It's not cruelty, it's psychology. When you are always there, always saying yes, always forgiving, even when she crosses lines, you stop being a man of value in her eyes and start becoming background noise. Predictable, easy, replaceable. That's when she starts taking you for granted. Not necessarily because she's malicious, but because you've silently taught her that your loyalty will exist no matter how she treats you. And what requires no effort, what costs nothing to keep, is almost always devalued. That's why she believed you'd never walk away. That's why she acted like your consistency was guaranteed. She thought she had you wrapped in her hand, and that false belief gave her permission to test, to push, to withdraw, all without fear of losing you. But the moment you pulled back, not with drama, not with anger, but with peace, you shattered that illusion. Suddenly, the man she thought she could always control no longer moved to her rhythm. Suddenly, she wasn't dictating the terms anymore. And here's where the shift becomes permanent. Your detachment doesn't signal weakness. It signals power. Because detachment, when it's born from clarity, is not about giving up on love. It's about refusing to pour your soul into a place where it isn't honored. It's about living as if your worth does not require her recognition. And that choice makes you rare. Not rare because you walked away in bitterness, but rare because you walked away in peace without the need to prove or punish. That's what unsettles her most. Because now she doesn't miss the man who begged for her time. She doesn't miss the man who tolerated being treated like an option. She misses the man who finally drew a line. The man who showed her through action, not words, that his value was never hers to decide, that his energy was not cheap, that his presence was not guaranteed. That is the version of you that becomes unforgettable. That's the memory that keeps her awake, the one she replays when she wonders if she let the right one slip away. And here is the paradox. The more you stop seeking her validation, the more she begins to crave yours. The more you stop trying to prove your worth, the more she realizes it was there all along. Your peace, your restraint, your quiet confidence, those are the qualities she never found in the men who came after you. And now that you've defined your value on your own terms, she knows she can't access that version of you unless she rises to meet it. That's why a man who refuses to be taken for granted can never be forgotten, because he forces her to confront the truth she tried to ignore. Respect is not earned by begging, it's earned by boundaries, and boundaries create value. And if you think walking away means you lose, think again. Walking away with peace is the ultimate victory, because while she wrestles with regret, you're free, living a life that no longer depends on her recognition. And that freedom is the one thing she can never take from you. At the end of it all, the truth is simple. You don't become unforgettable because you chase, because you plead, or because you prove yourself over and over again. You become unforgettable the moment you decide to live in peace, to reclaim your worth, and to let silence do the talking. A woman may act as if she doesn't care. She may even convince herself she can live without you. But what she cannot ignore is the shift in your energy when you finally choose yourself. That's when absence becomes power. That's when small things become memories. That's when calm masks chaos. That's when ego loses to emotion. That's when your glow haunts her. That's when silence turns into the loudest mirror. And that's when your value, redefined, leaves a mark she can never erase. So remember this: your strength isn't measured by how much you hold on, it's measured by how gracefully you can let go. Don't chase what doesn't honor you. Don't beg for what should already be yours. Walk with dignity and watch how everything that once dismissed you eventually looks back in regret. If this message brought you clarity, go ahead, like this video and subscribe to Stoic Station. Then seal your commitment in the comments with these powerful words: I rise in silence. I stand in strength. Because the moment you choose that path, you stop being just an option and start becoming the man no one ever forgets.